Hey, welcome back to the booth. This time we're looking at the Arturia MicroFreak. It's such a strange device. They've been around for a while and I've seen a lot of videos on them, but I decided to pick one up and I just want to talk about it for a few minutes. On the website, Arturia states, rewards the curious musician. And I gotta say, they nailed it. I mean, this thing really draws you in and makes you want to experiment. I'm not going to go into an in-depth thing showing you all of the features, all of the settings, all of the options and how they work, because there's quite a few videos out there on YouTube already that do that. I just wanted to give you my initial response, having just had this thing for a few days. First of all, very small. It has a capacitive keybed instead of a regular keyboard. So these keys don't have any moving parts, which is very different, very original, and a very different playing feel. These things are quirky, odd, and very unique. But what's the appeal, really? When I first got it and plugged it in, the first thing I thought is, man, these sounds are terrible. The factory sounds. Thin, buzzy, kind of little video game kind of sound effects. Things where you play one note and a bunch of stuff happens, whether it's an arpeggiation or some little musical thing. And I'm like, no, I want something I can play. I want to play a lead or a bass part or a pad or something, and so few of the sounds offered that. Got to keep in mind, these are just factory presets, and as I delved a little deeper into the architecture, I found I could get some really cool, interesting, different sounds out of this thing. So I want to talk about what I don't like about it and what I love about it. First, the cons. As far as oscillators and voices, it's very limited. It's mainly a monophonic synthesizer, but it has a paraphonic possibility, so you can play up to 4 notes at a time. But they're not notes where you've got a bunch of different oscillators tuned to different things on each note or whatever, or different waveforms and stuff. It's a lot more limiting than that. This OLED display is really great. It's got some really fun little graphics and stuff, but so hard to read, especially with my eyesight. So small, it could be like 3 or 4 times bigger for me to find it really useful. There's this pitch strip here. It works really well and it's really cool, but you can only use it for pitch, and there's a couple of other settings, slice and dice, that allow you to modify some of the settings when you're using an arpeggiator, for instance. If you could reassign that to something else, I think that would be hugely useful, because there isn't something like a mod wheel on here where you can add modulation while you're playing something. Another thing that bugged me when I use the hold button here, and I'm playing something, if I'm using the MIDI out, it doesn't recognize that. So I can't use that to get nice sustained notes when I'm triggering another device. The other thing is, because of this capacitive keybed, which is quite original, there are quite a few other companies out there that use a capacitive type touch keyboard, but it's quite rare and it takes a while to get used to. But the cool thing is, when you put your fingers on it, the amount of skin that contacts with these sensors is a way to add modulation or movement or something. So it takes a while to get used to that feel, but it can be very expressive. And it has no effects. So let's talk about that for a minute. Almost every synth out there now has tons of effects built in. Digital delays and reverb and chorus and, bit crushing things and all manner of things. But when you actually listen to the sound of just the synthesizer and you turn all the effects off, on a lot of those synthesizers, the sound isn't that interesting. So take your favorite synth patch on one of your synths and turn all the effects off and just listen to the actual sound of the oscillators and the filter and that kind of thing. And that will allow you to compare it more directly with the MicroFreak. Another con, mono output. But I never knew this thing was mono, because all the videos that I've heard of people using it on YouTube, they feed it into a digital stereo reverb or digital delay or like a Chase Bliss mood or something that opens it up and gives it all sorts of additional character and movement in the stereo field. So I didn't even know that it was a mono synth. And let's face it, we don't normally just plug our synths into a DAW or something and start recording without adding some sort of spatial effects or time delay effects or something. So at first I was a little put off by that. And then I realized, you know what? We're always using big, crazy stereo effects to get the sounds where we want them. It just doesn't have them built in. So the only downside of that is it's not part of your preset. But let's face it, we all have our external effects that we love, or effects in your DAW or whatever. And so that's not as big of a drawback as I thought it would be. The sounds that the MicroFreak can come up with are really diverse. I was really impressed and really surprised, partly because through firmware, they keep changing it, evolving it. They now have wavetables. You can load your own samples in using software. So that vastly exceeds it. Like, it came out in 2019, but I think it was only like in the last year that they came out with the new software. As soon as they added that new software, this thing took on a new life because you could throw your own samples in there, you could use wavetables, and all of a sudden it was way more capable. There's also a vocoder function. I don't love vocoders, but some people do. Graphically, I think it's pretty cool. So this is the Stellar version that has all these like stars and planets and graphics like that. There's the original version, which you've probably seen. And then there's the version, which is the vocoder version, which is white with swan type graphics. Now, I know maybe these aren't for everybody, these kind of graphics, but I love them. I think we're really into our synths. And to have a synth that looks like any other piece of technological gear in terms of the writing on them and the graphics, most of them are really boring, frankly. And I like to see something that's got a bit of funk, that's got a bit of attitude and something innovative in design. I think it's wonderful. So let's talk about more pros. You've got this modulation matrix, which is really quite powerful. You can make your way very quickly to a whole bunch of different types of modulation configurations, and you can do multiple modulation configurations. So that's pretty cool. Most of these knobs serve one function. So there's not a lot of menu diving, except for maybe the utilities menu and stuff like that. Pretty good utilities menu. I like that. I could just grab a knob and it always does the same thing. I think that's really good. And the feel of the pots is pretty good. You can run this thing from USB, or you can run it from a power supply. It's got MIDI in and out, and to use the MIDI in and out, they also give you 5-pin DIN cable adapters, 2 of them in the box for free. That's pretty cool. Not every company does that. So it's got CV, gate, and pressure out, and clock in and out, mini plug, and that's great for if you're patching into modular gear. It's got some really unique features like this cycling envelope. It's still a little limited because it's not polyphonic the way it triggers, but it's pretty cool. It's got an analog filter here. So even though there are quite a few limitations with this piece of gear, because you have so many different types of sound sources that you can start from it, there's 17 different ones. And that includes your ability to do grain manipulation, like granular stuff, and wavetable stuff, and FM synthesis. So the amount of different types of sounds you can get out of this thing is really impressive. So you've got velocity sensitivity, even though the keys don't move. You can control how much the velocity affects different parameters, volume or filter or whatever. But also, because of this capacitive keybed, which actually measures your contact with it, you can trigger a note by using the tip of your finger and then lay your finger down on the keybed. And because you have more contact with the keys, all of a sudden that becomes like a modulation source or a way to control something. And it's polyphonic aftertouch. So you can easily bring out one note versus another just by the way your hand comes in contact with this keybed. You're not going to be playing regular parts, keyboard parts on this thing, partly because the keyboard's so small, partly because it's limited to 4 voices. But what you will do is be drawn to different places because of the way it's laid out. So it's really good for experimentation and exploring, and I really find it a lot of fun to play with. It's really inspiring. The other thing that just blows my mind about this, they're like $349. I can't think of another piece of gear that has these kind of features and is this fun and engaging and that you can get lost in for anywhere near this price tag. So I got this one used for like $320 Canadian. That's about $235 US, and it was in perfect shape with the box and the cables and everything. So think about that, like just over $200. How could you possibly go wrong by having a piece of kit like this if it inspires you and it maybe takes you to some different places than the gear that you've already got? But here's something else that's really cool. I've got a Deluge and I love it, but all those colored pads on the Deluge, they're not velocity sensitive. There's no aftertouch. There's no shaping the sound at all with your hands. This thing, I plug this in to my Deluge, and all of a sudden, I've got velocity sensitivity. Then I can shape the sound by putting more of the skin on my fingers against this printed circuit keyboard. And all of a sudden, my Deluge is sounding amazing. It's really coming to life because I can get all this polyphonic aftertouch happening. So for me, for my Deluge, just as a controller, even if I wasn't using the sound engine, I'd say it's a no-brainer. It's like a really good investment. Okay, I want you to hear some of these sounds that for me personally, I just thought they were laughable and annoying and embarrassing and completely unuseful. There are some sounds that I found really moody and atmospheric and captivating and original. Anyway, like I say, I'm not going to go into the big thing of letting you hear all the sounds in it because there are so many people on YouTube that have done such a great job of that already. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of why I think at this price it is a great investment. And the deeper you get into this modulation matrix, the more powerful it is. On the Arturia website and on the box for the thing, it says there's 5 sources and there's 7 destinations for modulation. But that's actually not true at all. It's like way more complicated than that because some of these you can user define so that you can set any of these parameters to be a destination, and you can do multiple assignments, and you can modulate some parameters with other parameters using this same matrix. So it's really a clever, interesting matrix. The ability to actually tweak your sounds once you're playing them from the front panel is really strong. It's really powerful. You can go in there and get all sorts of things out of it. In no time, you'll understand what everything does, and you'll be able to go in there in real time and really tweak, really sculpt your sounds while you're playing them. Really good for that because, like I say, almost a knob per parameter. So it's really immediate to just grab and make something happen. Take this thing, plug it into a stereo effect device, and you will be gone for hours. I guarantee it. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thanks.